We cannot just conclude that it is not the will of God just because it is taking too long. Consistent failures is not enough to say that maybe it is not the will of God. We are often too quick to say that it is not the will of God. It is way too hasty to say that it is not the will of God because of things did not work out according to your time frame. When things don't happen when we want it to happen, we then assume that it is not the will of God. That is not how it works. The will of God shall surely come to pass no matter how long it takes. God's time is the best. God knows when and how. We do not have the celestial power to know when the will of God will happen or when it will not happen. All we can do is to wait and see. Our daily prayers should be that the will of God be done in our lives. It takes faith, patience, and perseverance to wait on God and to look forward to His will to be done in our lives. Do not be discouraged by consistent failures and setbacks. Do not be deceived when it is not working out even after trying countless times. Do not give up after making series of attempts and yet nothing is working out. Keep trying in faith. Keep knocking on God's door. Keep praying. Keep hoping. Keep looking unto God. Refuse to throw in the towel. Your faith and perseverance are being tested. God may be testing your patience. Be careful so that you do not lose the blessing God has packaged for you because you gave up too soon. Do not force words into God's mouth. Do not say what God have not said. Do not assume that it is not God's will. Allow God to lead. Let us follow God's lead in all things. God has the final word. God has the final say. Until God says it is over, it is not yet over. God has a plan for you. He knows the best time to make these plans happen. Maybe you have tried multiple times to have a child and you have not succeeded yet. Do not take it that it is not the will of God. Maybe you have attempted many times to execute a certain project and you were unsuccessful and therefore you conclude that it is not the will of God. Maybe you have prayed over a situation for a long time and your prayers have not been answered, and then you make up your mind that it is not the will of God. Our God is a God of surprises. He shows up at the last minute. He is the God of the 11th hour. When we have given up hope is when He appears and intervenes. Have you read the Gospel of John chapter 5? There was this man who has been paralyzed for 38 years. He has not been able to walk. He has been hoping for a healing if he is able to make it in the pool of Bethesda when the water is stirred, but nobody could help him. He could have given up on his healing and cure and say that it is the will of God. On this day, Jesus noticed him, and knowing he had been there and in his condition for a long time, Jesus immediately healed him and restored him. We never know when Jesus will show up in your situation. It is always good to be ready, awake, and watchful in our faith. There is no situation beyond the power of God. Have you read the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8? Do you remember the woman who have struggled with the issue of blood for 12 years without any cure? She never gave up. She could have settled for what many would have said that it is the will of God. She kept seeking Jesus until she touched the hem of His garment in faith, and the issue of blood ceased. It is only God who knows His will and plan for us. We often don't know. All we can do is to wait on God in faith and in prayer. God will make sure that at the end of the day, whatever is His will of us, He will help us to accept it and find peace in it. The word of the Lord in the book of Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 11 tells us that He knows the plan He has for us, plans to prosper us and not to harm us, plans to give us hope and a future. God did not put a time frame on when this plan will come to fulfillment. It is up to Him. So therefore, until then, let us keep fixing our gaze on Jesus and on God. Let us not grow weary and impatient with God. God will do what He says He will do. He will not tarry. God's delay is not a denial. Dear God, help us to be patient with you, our fellow human beings, and ourselves, especially in difficult and trying times. Help us to anticipate your will with faith and joy and not to grow weary and give up hope. Amen.